Hi, welcome to the HealthTech Marketing Show. This is the podcast. I think it's the only podcast that focuses on business-to-business marketing in healthcare, specifically for healthcare technology marketers. And I think this is episode 68. We've been going for a couple of years now. And it's going really well. So if you're a regular listener, thank you for listening. And if this is your first episode, I really hope you enjoy it. And I hope you subscribe. You can subscribe to this on Spotify or an Apple or any of your favorite podcast applications. And you can also watch us on YouTube. If you go to Health Launchpad or just search for the HealthTech Marketing Show, it will come up. A big thank you to our longtime sponsor, HIMS. Everybody knows HIMS, but we really appreciate their support and everything that you guys do for the healthcare IT community. Today's topic is one of the most important topics in marketing and is something that's become even more important in the last year. I mean, this has been a tough year in the marketing community. And, measurement is the really sharp end of a lot of the issues that are going on. I think it's been just even more challenging than ever for marketing folks to defend budgets, justify investments. And I think, a lot of the turmoil that's been happening in our industry is part of that. And we try to help out the community as much as possible. And one of the things that we do is we run a private network of HealthTech marketing leaders called the HealthTech Marketing Network. You can find more about that on the healthlaunchpad.com. And it's one of the topics that they're most interested in. And we recently had a couple of hour-long sessions where we had, I think, well over 50, 60 people attend both sessions. And we surveyed the community about where they are on their progress with measurement. And I'll give you the highlights. The first thing that's clear is that, everybody's measuring campaign metrics, and majority of marketers also are measuring conversion and opportunities measurements in some kind of way. Only 1 in 5 say they have, ABM-like measures or opportunity measures that, some way, has attribution related to it. The vast majority, nearly everybody, is moving towards a better way of doing attribution and ROI measurement. And, I think that sadly, very few feel that their measurement is doing a good enough job of convincing management about the ROI of marketing. So, at best, I think the sort of general feeling is that the CEO and the rest of the management team feel supportive, but not 100% convinced. So today, what we want to do is talk about what's going on from a measurement standpoint. And what are some of the best practices that you can start to think about that will help you move towards a more attributable and ROI, or at least sort of clearer opportunity-centric model of measurement? And to do that, I have 2 fantastic guests, a couple of folks I've got to know really well over the last few months, and who just have so much to share on this topic. So with that, I want to introduce Gretchen Hoffman and Mark Erwich. So Gretchen, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you, Mark, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Great, Adam. I'm happy to be here. I'm a B2B SaaS marketing leader who excels at demand generation in healthcare and also security, innovation, and call center. I have a fair amount of innovation and design thinking background, which allows me to add a little spin onto things in the healthcare space. Happy to be here.
Very cool. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, super excited to be here as well. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Health Launchpad. And principal, and principal also, which gives me a great opportunity to talk towards different customers. And see their challenges and help them as they proceed.
Excellent. And all right, let's kick off. And I want Gretchen, I think we're going to start with you on this one. So, you've been involved in several companies, and you're working with other companies right now on demand generation. So talk about your approach to measurement, marketing measurement, and how's it evolved over the past few years? I mean, what? And I'm also curious is like what's driving that change?
Well, it's amazing because I almost don't even look at it that it's evolved. It's shifted. It's this big shift that's happening right now. It's not just a little at a time. And a lot of it is because of the advancements of data analytics and AI. I mean, you have to talk about AI, right? I mean, artificial intelligence is making a huge shift. And what we were seeing in the last couple of years is there was a lot more pressure on demand gen as companies needed to be able to show their investments were worthy. In other words, revenue, right? And really looking at ROI and being able to justify truthfully marketing expense and demand gen, right? And so what's happened is now with AI and the deeper understanding we have with data analytics, we're able to start, I don't like to use the word justify, but it essentially is, justify what we're doing in marketing, but also even more importantly, be able to look at where you need to be able to pivot in real time. So what I mean by that is AI and the data analytics understandings allows you to really look at things more like the patterns of behavior, right? The intent. You can more deeply personalize the messaging, your content, your offers. There's just so much more that a demand gen person can do to be more relevant and really being able to capitalize on what AI has to offer. And I take a minute to tell you that before I set up and answer the specific question about measurement, simply because that setup allows us to look at a fundamental change that's happened that I think most demand gen people really need to look at, and marketers, is you don't just want to look at individuals and look at what leads are coming in top of funnel, right? You don't, because right now everybody says, well, the lead's quality. Then you get that friction between sales and marketing, right? Because you know, marketing might say, I have 1,000 leads, and sales is like, well, oh, they're crap, right? What happens now is you have the data, you have the ability to look at things, and what you need to start looking at more is, people call it the opportunity-based metrics, right? So what are you doing to make sure that you're getting the right leads in the funnel? Are you leveraging AI and the data that you can learn about and getting those to convert faster through the funnel? Okay, one point to look at. The other point to look at that you hear a lot of people talk about is moving from MQL, right? The individual leads that people oftentimes hear are not moving through the funnel, and are they quality or are they not, as I mentioned before, moving to looking at the account level, not individual level. So looking at MQAs, right? So what you need to look at is MQAs, in addition, buying groups. So what we're saying now is, back to my comment about the opportunity-based, really, what are the groups, right? I mean, think about healthcare, right? I mean, it's a complex buying process. There's more than one person making the decision. So you need to look at buying groups. Forrester says it's 5 people in a buying group. 6 Sense says, I don't remember, 9 or 10. It's a lot more. But you need to figure out how many are in your buying group.
Yeah. And I mean, in healthcare, it's 6 or 7 minimum, sometimes as many as 20. Yeah.
I mean, it absolutely could be. And so, and I agree with you, by the way, but what I'm trying to get people to think about is look at your buying group and look at your key accounts, the high value accounts, and figure out how you measure those, ABM versus MQL, for example. Okay. You also want to look at lead scoring models, right? In terms of, are you scoring so the actions that people take and the touch points that are more ready to buy, like a demo, are scored higher than just doing a thought leadership paper? Okay. And are you doing that so you're getting the right buying groups behavior to bubble up? CLV, customer life value. Are you looking at long-term revenue impact, right? Are you looking at the velocity of conversions? So again, there's a lot more things that we have to look at that will drive to that revenue today that we weren't before. But the key part here is the capabilities of AI and the data insights you can get, and all that intent allows you to personalize and change how you're doing demand gen as well as how you're reporting it so that you can align better with sales, change out how you're doing your campaigns and programs so you can resonate better with those buyers.
Yeah.
And one additional thing I think you have to look at is, and again, depends who you ask, it's 70 to 85% of people are doing all their research before they even want to come and talk to you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Which means it's even more important you're figuring out who's bubbling up, because by the time they come to you, oftentimes you're either on the short list or not.
Right.
You know, and you
Right.
need to
I think that
quickly.
I think the data, the Sixth Sense data that I'm obsessed with is that 84% of buyers go with the first company they call, and they don't call till they're 70% of the way through their process.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they've already decided, and because they've done their research. So I think it's a very interesting point. I mean, I think what you've added some color to is, there's a trend of a shift from quantity to quality in terms of measurement, but AI is actually a big enabler of that happening. I just want to sort of build on this point a bit and throw it over to you, Mark. So one of the things that changes when you move from volume to quality is you suddenly your salespeople are used to, but they might tell you the leads are crap, but they're used to the fact that they're getting hundreds of, there's hundreds of leads coming in every month, and everybody feels good that there's leads coming in. So suddenly it's like, well, you were going to give you them when they're good and ready, and they're not ready yet. And when we're going to give them to you, they're going to be fewer of them. Is that something that is that something that you've experienced? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Well, I think Gretchen made a great point with regards towards getting your accounts measurement really focused on the individual accounts rather than on the lead. Like in terms of alignment, nothing worse talking with a sales leader and telling him that you brought in thousands of leads, knowing that they will not close thousands of leads. They will only close hundreds of accounts or tens of accounts, if that's appropriate. So I think that sets a base. But based on this fact, and recently we had this great talk with Gary, where he's explaining, well, see it as a journey, and what are the elements that marketing helps to process this buyer through the journey, and knowing that you're only measuring 30% of it, because that other 70% was even before you were aware that they were in contact with you, right? So look towards it much more from a perspective, what are you doing on that particular account to make sure that they have the right information at the right time, all of the individuals from the buyers group, so that they go through this journey. Yeah.
And when you make that transition, because that's a fundamental change in the way that you're measuring marketing, you're reporting marketing, and the way that you're working with sales, how does, both of, I mean, Gretchen, why don't you take this first? Is like, how does sales respond when you make that change?
When you make the change, I think a lot of it is education and also buy-in. They have to be able to buy in, and they have to agree with some of the criteria and requirements that you're putting in place. And I think you can't do it and make all the decisions, even scoring sometimes, right? I mean, they want to understand and feel like you're transparent, so you're truly a partner.
And do they fit, how long does it take until the penny drops and they go, oh, actually, this is great. We don't feel like we're getting, 100 crap leads from you a month. We feel like we're getting 5 really good opportunities.
When they
how long is that? What's that?
When they get them.
When they get them. Okay, got it. So when they start getting them, yeah. All right, there you go. That's the answer. That could be a month or that could be a year. All right, let's kind of dive in a little bit deeper on account-based measurement. Why do you think a lot of companies in our sector in healthcare are looking at account at ABM? What should they be thinking about from a measurement standpoint? And in particular, is there anything kind of unique from a healthcare perspective?
I mean, I think right now, part of what we talked about before, the buying groups, is really critical because it's a complex buying process with healthcare, right? There's a lot of stakeholders. Like you just mentioned, Adam, there might be 7, right?
Yep.
You know, and 7 individuals. And we need to make sure we're engaging the influencers as well as the decision makers so nobody holds up the process if we're going to accelerate those conversions to deals. And it's already a long process, right?
So get a bit nitty gritty here. How do you actually do that though? How do you measure it?
So right now, I believe if you can afford a platform, depends if you know, some companies can, some can't, right? There's different ones, but you know, 2 of the top ones, right, are Demandbase or 6 Sense.
Yep.
Right. And honestly, Mark knows we use Demandbase when we were at Verado. But I'm also a big 6 Sense advocate. Okay. And I have not, in full disclosure, fully used them, seen demos, you know, and researched. The takeaway that I would say is both are good, right? In order to decide what platform you need, and I'll mention some lower tier ones also in a minute, but you have to look at, you know, what kind of budget you have, what your needs are, what's your current tech stack, you know, what's it going to get you? What's your strategy from business and marketing end? So again, I'm not here to tell everyone they need it, but it is an approach to look at, because what they do is they allow you to see the whole journey. And they also have buyer groups like that you can look at, and it allows sales to go in and see them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a I'll say automated way to be able to start looking at what's bubbling up at an account level and a buyer group level. And Demandbase is very good from an ABM standpoint. Okay. It really looks at what high value accounts are converting, and it has AI driven insights to look at. It's very good at looking at that multi-touch that happens with the buyer groups, whereas 6 Sense, it really excels at using AI and predictive. So again, you'd have to look at a demo for both and figure out what works for you. But I think they both can very much help. There's other tools like Terminus, Rollworks, Hockey Stack.
Yeah. We use Propensity a lot. Yeah.
There's other ones you can look at that are more affordable. Again, you have to decide what your needs are. Like Terminus and Rollworks are a little more skewed for advertising, but again, they can do other things.
Yeah.
So you just have to figure out what your priorities are.
Yeah, we find a lot of the work that we do with clients, and we're running ABM client campaigns for several clients, is we're using Propensity to figure out intent, so third party and first party intent, and also as a sort of an integration platform for campaigns. But when it comes to the level of analysis that you need, we're creating our own dashboards manually, which is pretty painful. I don't think it scales that well. But if you're just getting started with ABM, there's a way to do it, but it is, it's painful. Mark, you've got a lot of experience with Demandbase. I mean, build on Gretchen's, what Gretchen was saying there. I mean, what is the, what can you expect to get out of an investment in something like Demandbase?
So if okay with you, I would like to start with, like you also asked a question specifically related towards healthcare. I would like to start there. And
sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm so excited about ABM or better AB, call it account-based, because it's not just marketing, it's sales and customer experience as well in healthcare for the following reason. There is, according towards the latest figure from AHA, there's 6,120 hospitals in the United States. There is not that many more hospitals being built, and there's not that many hospitals reduced. So that number is pretty fixed. They roll up towards about 1,700 buying entities, right? Yep. You have the system. So very, very defined market. And we, all of us in the HealthTech Marketing Network, we target these hospitals, we target these networks. And so we can literally count them one by one. Is there interest? Are they engaged with us? Have they filled out an inquiry? Have we identified the right people within the buying group? And is there an opportunity, and have we sold something? So very specific and very structured. You can have an approach selling to them one by one and measuring that. And particularly if you talk about, hey, what is your communication towards the C-suite? What do you even report out towards the board? Is this type of information, if your total available market, what is the progress that you're making quarter after quarter, year after year? So I think that's why I'm so passionate about account-based, specifically in the healthcare industry. Now, let's shift towards technology. Gretchen made some great points with regards towards different vendors that are out there. I think what is really interesting in the technology is what is it actually that falls under the account-based umbrella, and there, like, I think that different vendors have a different perspective of what is actually relevant and what is helping here. So things that are important for me is in the concept of account-based is, can you do the account identification? Really important. Like, you have many different, and particularly with so many people working from home, not necessarily coming with their email address and being recognized from an IP address from the hospital, right? It's now their home address. They may be logged in under Google, and it's much harder to identify that. So having the right technology in order to support that. How are you doing your buyers group identification? And making sure that you can do that specifically related towards the solution that you have. In one product, like the clinical staff will be relevant. In another product, nursing may be relevant. So it needs to be flexible. You need to be able to adjust that. How can you visualize this journey? And talking about the value of an ABM platform towards the sales, this is a great example. Like, if you can show to sales, hey, this is what's happening with that particular account. We have these people downloaded. These people were looking towards an email. Like, making that visible and showing that journey visually in your ABM platform, super valuable. Can you do orchestration? If somebody clicks on a link, automatically send something. These type of things are relevant. Also looking towards what is the philosophy of the platform vendor with regards towards the sale. Does it stop at the sale or does it continue? Some vendors say, hey, it stops at the sale. Other vendors really think about it more strategically and then look towards customer experience as well. Hey, after the sale, there's more products that we can sell. So they have that embedded in towards their platform. So I think those are the type of things.
Yeah, I think it's just if I could just summarize what you've both been saying, it's that, kind of traditional campaign-based approach to measurement starts basically kind of left to right. So you're running a campaign, you're measuring how the campaign's delivering results. If you start with an opportunity-centric, or more importantly, an account-centric approach to measurement, you actually start with your 6,120 hospitals, whatever it is, figure out which are the ones that matter to you, and then build the buying groups in those, because you can source the data from Definitive, and then measure your progress in getting those engaged. So you're actually starting right to left rather than left to right. You're kind of I think, you and I had this conversation. I wrote a blog post about it called basically measure, it's all about measuring backwards. Yeah. And I think that's the sort of the fundamental difference in how you measure.
Totally. Yeah. And even before you do any of this, so some people, what they do is they pick a sale, could be anyone, and then start dissecting it. Hey, what's the first time that they start interacting? Did they start interacting? So look towards all of the data sources that you have within your organization. And I'm not talking about any fancy tools, right? You can just do this with Google Analytics, your marketing automation platform, and start looking backwards. And you learn a lot from that alone. And that can help you also further define, hey, what are the areas that you are really successful? What are the areas that you need to invest more in terms of technology?
So let's start with the notion of marketing, of measuring backwards. Attribution is certainly part of that. So, Mark, tell me, you've got some perspectives on attribution, how to do it, whether to do it, what the value of it is. What do you think about the whole area of marketing attribution measurement?
Well, for those listeners who also listened towards talk, which I think it was 2 weeks ago with Kerry Cunningham, where when we were talking about attribution, he used a 2-letter acronym. The first letter was B. The last letter was an S. There was nothing in between. So I think it's really interesting what's happening in the market, right? Adobe acquired Visible, Salesforce acquired Datarama. There's a few other solutions out there, and I've been in meetings, like endless meetings, where you have this discussion: is it first touch, last touch? Is it a 2-3-2 model? Is it a balance model? In the end, like and I think Kerry is truly right. Like, if we live in a world where the buyers are really defining their journey, and 70% is not even visible, they're not even interacting with us, like, be really careful before you ask an investment, because the data that you get out of this may be limited and not tell the full story. And if you're making an investment, or if you just asked the CEO for an investment in towards a platform, and now the data is coming out of there is only showing, let's say, a third of what the value that marketing truly brings, that's not really good for your career.
Yeah. I just sort of stay on that point for a second, because, if you play that out to its conclusion, it's basically you're trying to measure the impact of marketing by measuring buyer behavior. But what you're saying is that, at best you can measure, I don't know, 10%, 20% of what their behavior is.
If your tool is perfect and you use that 70%, you could say, okay, a third could be measured with this tool. But the problem is, it's a very specific, like, then they're already closer towards the end of the funnel, right? So it's a very specific area. And I think what demand gen people are most interested is the beginning of the funnel. How do we get them in? And that's the part that's hard.
If we should use an analogy, which I think is particularly timely right now, because it's we're recording this on October 10th, and if this was a hurricane we were measuring, it would be like, we think there's a system out there. It might be a tropical storm, it might be a hurricane. We're not sure if it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5, and we think it's going to hit Florida, but it also might hit Texas. That's essentially what we're saying.
But it's interesting, just as a comment, Mark, your comment about demand gen people are looking to get things into the funnel, I think it's shifted. I mean, 3-5 years ago, whatever, you were supposed to do top of funnel, but there is so much pressure on demand gen to make sure there's conversions going through the funnel. It's like what we talked about in the beginning, right? And so I would have to push back a little and say, I think the way you get sales and marketing aligned is that you all care about the entire funnel all the way through to revenue and deal. Yeah. And I think that's a fundamental shift, even though I talked about AI and data and everything in the beginning. So fundamentally, everybody has to care about revenue and be gold on revenue.
Talk us through the steps, like talk us through talk through a journey there, from top of the funnel all the way through, and then and the what you're reporting when, and how those conversations go.
So what I'd say is, I usually just look at it simple as, like, people talk about content, right? Early, mid, late funnel. So, so it might be from a content end, you're looking to see what you need from offers, content, et cetera, to get people to pull through. You want to align with sales and get their ideas, so you feel like you're a partner there, as well as product marketing and everyone else. Then, to answer your question with the funnel, you all need to agree on the stages of the funnel, right? And who's responsible for which stage of the funnel, right? And again, people have different terminologies, right? Well, I'll just simplify it and say MQL. Some people, MQA, sorry, we just talked about MQA, right? Maybe it's opportunity. People have different stages, and, stage 0, 1, 2, whatever. And then I'll just move it right to deal. All right. And from that standpoint, sales and marketing needs to be aligned on whose responsibility is what, for SDRs, for, the field sales folks, for marketing. Because in the end, you should be working together throughout the funnel, whether marketing and demand gen are helping to draft scripts. Again, you have to decide, or whether you're helping with different offers, or you're working together because things aren't working and you're identifying early enough, why are things not converting? But you're in together to figure it out. And so that's why I say it's really important that sales and marketing believe that they have that same goal of not number of leads or number of MQAs, but number of opportunities and a revenue number.
Yep.
Because in the end, we have to work side by side as truly a team, not fighting each other, not saying those are crap leads. What'd you pass them to me for? You should be all in it together.
Yep.
Does that answer your question, Adam?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think it's not quite as bleak as my hurricane analogy, because I think what you're basically saying is like, you can only measure what you can see. The only measure, because what you're saying is you're measuring engagement with the content that you're putting out there and the channels that, you have the ability to measure them on.
Yes, but there's one additional point to make. If you were working together on it, and there's some things that the data isn't showing, because whether we like it or not, sometimes we can't get all the right data, right? There's always the argument about, is it accurate? If you're working together, you can solve things together, and you're not pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get to is, if you truly make it that you're in it together, then you're supporting each other throughout the process. And in the end, you're looking to the same thing. How do we work together to get the right revenue we need?
Right. Yeah. I know. But, it raises, it raises an acute problem in healthcare, which is the length of the sales cycles.
Yeah.
Because, the salespeople are under pressure to deliver now and to close now. And so, how do you both deal? What from a marketing measurement standpoint, what are some of the things to think about in that sort of in terms of how to handle the difficulty of the long sales cycle?
So take a look back towards this funnel that I described earlier, right? So for each and every organization, they go through these different stages. And so you take a cohort, and what's the progress that you make every month or every week, whatever your reporting cycle is. And I think, and with that, you can demonstrate the progress that you're making and how you're making it. And I think that creates also a much more valuable discussion on, hey, this is what's working, this is not what's working, and this is what's working on these group of accounts, right? If you start identifying specifically on these accounts, and then work with your sales or BDRs, SDRs, whatever you have, who are interacting with those accounts, you can actually demonstrate the progress. And I would also say, hey, don't stop there. Continue that reporting all the way towards opportunities, because then you have some more proof points towards, hey, they took these types of content from your website, or they responded towards this campaign. And that is converting better than other leads that you may have had from another type of campaign. So you actually create a self-learning engine and can continuously improve, which I think is really important. Plus, it's also great dialogue to have with your sales leaders.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really well. So let's talk about it. So we one of the areas we haven't really touched on here is about reporting to the executive. So, I mean, so to Gretchen, what are the types of ways that you report the impact that marketing's have to the C-suite?
So first, I think there's a couple things you want to think about is, even just before you get in the reporting, to make sure it's successful, make sure you've aligned up front on what your goals are going to be. Yeah. And the executives know what they are. They believe they align with the business objectives. And frankly, there's a little education that happens, right? In terms of why you have those goals, when are you going to communicate them out, and when are you going to do check-ins just yourselves to make sure if anything needs to pivot, et cetera. So I think you have to start with that. And then in terms of some of the specific things that you look at, I mean, I mentioned some of them before, right? It's pipeline, it's revenue, it's the CLV, right? I mean, you also, if you're an ABM model.
What's CLD?
CLV, customer lifetime value. Like,
CLV. Sorry, I think you said D. Yeah, okay.
No, sorry. Yep. Because people are wanting to look at what long-term revenue you can get.
Yep.
Too, right? So that, that helps from that angle.
Which is actually on that point, thanks to Mark. Mark, pointed out a really great article to me recently about the customer acquisition costs. And basically the premise of it for our market is for every dollar in sales, you should be spending $2 in sales and marketing for net new revenue. I'm simplifying it, but that's the basic premise of it. And the reason is because the lifetime value is X times the dollar of the first year of sales. And it's like, in the business that, in healthcare technology, customers, I believe, have a much longer lifetime value than they do in other other industries. I mean, many companies report 9 years plus. And so it's hard to get that point across, I think, to the C-suite, which is, think of marketing as an investment. And it's going to cost you $100,000 to get $50,000 in revenue, but that $50,000 in revenue is actually worth probably $500,000 in value to the company. Yeah. Sorry, I took you off your thing there, but it's a passion point for me. So
no, but you're absolutely right. I'll just name a couple more, and then Mark, definitely jump in. I think the other thing you really have to look at are the conversions, right? So, and I say that in terms of, you mentioned, Adam, about the long, life cycle, right?
Yeah.
And so from that angle is, you really do have to look at, maybe it's number of meetings that are being had by channel, right? Because they want to understand, based on their investments, think of ROI, right? What investments are we making and what's actually getting us meetings? Because you can measure that in the short term, opportunities, and what's driving the pipeline, and then what's getting us to deals. And you need to look at each of those by channel, right? And channel investment, to start figuring out where you need to move the levers. And I think executives are at the point where they want to understand those type of things too, to know that their investments are worthy.
Yes.
Right? So I think that's really important, and the velocity of the funnel and the leads that are going through. And Mark, jump in if there's other.
Well, particularly, Mark, is this, I mean, you in a few roles, I think, you've reported to the board, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think what the board is most interested in is, hey, what is this progress that you're making versus your total available market, right? Are these prospects actually engaged, or are they just out there? Are they even interested in your solution? So if your metrics can show that there is interaction, that they are downloading, but they're not interested in filling out any form, you're already demonstrating that you're building up not only for today, but also for the future, particularly in line of this longer sales cycle, and the buyer really owning this process more than the seller is, which is basically the world that we live in. And I think I just want to make a statement towards the listeners, because as we're sharing a lot of good information, there may be people saying, well, that's all a lot of complication, and that seems like a lot of work. I've been reporting on MQLs, and when I go in towards a meeting, that's the only thing they're asking me for. I'm just sending out a warning signal. You need to change that environment yourself, because your boss or whoever you report towards it may not ask for it, but your results are going to be worse year over year.
Yeah.
LinkedIn advertising, Google advertising increasing with 25% every year. We live in a digitally saturated world where it's going to be hard to get any attention anywhere, unless you have unlimited budgets, which most of us don't. Like this, if you measure in the same way that you've been measuring, you're selling yourself short, which is one. But two, at some point, people will start wondering, well, what's the value of marketing? Which is really, the value is there. The value may even be more, but you're using the wrong ways to measure it.
I think that is a fantastic piece of advice. It's really, really, really helpful. We're coming to the end now, and actually, my last question to both of you was going to be one piece of advice, and I think that, Mark, I thought that was really excellent. Gretchen, closing words from you. What one piece of advice do you have for folks who are listening to this?
So one, I absolutely agree with what Mark said, but I'll also add that things are changing. I mentioned in the beginning about the shift. I mean, guys, don't fall behind, right? You have got to be innovative. You have got to use AI. I mean, you can't afford to not. So Mark's mentioned you need to move to the account-based model. You need to look at ABM, whatever some of these other pieces are that we've already talked about, but I really encourage everyone, figure out AI or you're going to fall behind, because AI does absolutely allow you to be more effective and efficient. And there's absolutely ways to make it more personalized, right? And more relevant at a lot faster pace. And you can make it so it doesn't sound like a machine. And I know there's a lot of fears there, especially in healthcare, but guys, you can make it work if you get your skills set up and you have the right tools. So I'd say absolutely look at it or you'll fall behind. And that would be one of my top pieces of advice.
Thank you. That's great. Very actionable. Both of what you said is very actionable. So thank you both, Gretchen and Mark. I really do appreciate, your passion and the insights and the sort of really nitty gritty actionable stuff that you shared today. So, so what I will do with this is I'm going to post the video on the website, but I'll create a blog about this using sort of summarizing what you've said in a very sort of, in sort of a how-to kind of way for folks. So, if you're listening to this, head over to healthlaunchpad.com and there should be a blog on this that you can actually use to sort of put this into motion. If you're watching the video, you can listen to this on Spotify or Apple or whatever podcast application you like. And if you want to watch this, if you're listening to this and you want to see the video, head over to YouTube and search for Health Launchpad or HealthTech Marketing Show, and you will find this video. One last thing for anybody listening. If you found this useful and you think that anybody in your network would find this useful, send it to someone. In fact, think of 2 people who might find this useful, and I would suggest you email them the link to the podcast or link to the video. So with that, I want to thank you again, Gretchen and Mark, and I want to bid everybody a farewell, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Great. Thank you very much.